Bieletsky, Belarus. Writer and human rights defender Bieletsky is the founder of Yasna Human Rights Center, a leading human rights organization whose work and members have been repeatedly targeted by the Belarusian authorities. In March 2021, the Belarusian Investigative Committee opened a case against Yasna as part of a broader crackdown on independent media and civil society organizations unleashed by the Belarusian authorities following the disputed presidential elections of August 2020. As chairman of Yasna, Bieletsky was subsequently summoned for questioning. He demanded a protocol of interrogation in Belarusian, which took several days to produce. Bieletsky has been held in pretrial detention in Minsk since July 2021 on trumped-up charges of tax evasion, for which he faces up to 7 years in prison. A date for his trial hearing has yet to be set. PEN International believes that Bieletsky is being targeted for his human rights work and for exercising his right to peaceful assembly and expression. PEN International calls for his immediate and unconditional release and for all charges against him to be dropped. I'm Aurelia Dondo, Europe Program Coordinator, PEN International.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry, my phone started ringing at the moment. Welcome, everyone, to the PEN International Translation and Linguistic Rights panel called Resisting Russian Cultural Imperialism. This panel, we have to start with one word: war, Sõda, Vina, la guerre, in capital letters. On the Estonian Independence Day, 24th of February 2022, this year, Russia invaded Ukraine. For our region, this brings back hundreds of years of Russian power and Russian cultural hegemony. And it is extremely difficult for us to hear the consistent, what about Russian culture? So this is what we are here to discuss today. And welcome, dear panelists, Lidia, Zhigunova, Ola Hnatiuk, Inga, Gaile, and Yauhen, Sapach. So to begin with, perhaps each of you will introduce yourself in like 1 minute. And let's start with Ola, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ola Hnatiuk, and I was born in Warsaw and working in Ukraine from 2006. And it is my second mother language. And the first foreign language was Russian. And until beginning from 1983 until now, I don't speak Russian publicly because of a very obvious situation today, but it was obvious for me beginning from this time, early 80s. It is almost 40 years ago. So my resistance against Russian imperialism is long lasting.
Thank you. Next, Lidia, please.
Hi,
introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Lidia Zhigunova. So I am Circassian by origin. I'm from the North Caucasus region. Currently, I am based in the US. I am a professor of Russian. Actually, I teach Russian language and literature at Tulane University. I'm also a language activist. I am in the North Caucasus, where I go every summer to visit my family and to take part in the sort of language resistance activities or language revival and preservation activities, I organized a summer camp for children, which I successfully ran for over 3 summers, starting in 2017. And that's, we're talking about Circassian language, which is like any other minority languages in Russia, is actually dying because Russian is, as we know, it's a killer language. It kills the languages of ethnic minorities in Russia, even though, you know, those languages have an official status. For example, we have 30 official languages in Russia alongside with Russian, but unfortunately, so the repression is very, very tangible, so that the languages are not doing well. So I am an organizer of this summer camp, which is I called Under the Tree for kids ages 7 to 12, which I, as I said, ran successfully over 3 summers before the pandemics. So yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Thank you, Lidia. You said something that I wanted to say myself, so you're doing wonderful work. Yauhen, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katlin already said. My name is Yauhen. It's Belarusian name, so it's a variant of name. Basically, it's Evgeny in Russian or Eugene. But yeah, I'm calling myself Yauhen. It's very important, especially that now I'm living in Warsaw, because we were forced. I say we, as Pan Belarus, was forced to leave Belarus because of liquidation of Pan Belarus by Supreme Court. So yeah, we were forced to leave our country, and I started to work in Pan Belarus just since the beginning in the 2020. So when the Belarusians experienced not only political but I guess also and cultural revolution, Belarusians finally recognized themselves as Belarusians, and they started to pay more attention to their identity, to their language, and their traditions, myths, culture, and so on. Yeah, and basically I'm a linguist, and I speak French also, and the Russian was my family language, and yep, as already has been already said, that Russian language is really destroy all other languages, and that's why I started to speak Belarusian just a few years ago. But it was my personal decision, so I guess it's really important.
Thank you, Yauhen. And now Inga from Latvia.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Inga Gaile. I'm president of PEN Latvia, and I'm poet and prose writer, and as well I'm editor of our podcast Compulsory Literature, in which we in recent 2 years have. Last year, we translated a lot of women writers which have not been translated to Latvian, like Audre Lorde or Leonard Carrington. And this year, we have translated a lot of Ukrainian wartime poetry and Stanislav Asayev's The Torture Camp on Paradise Street from to Latvian, and published these texts as well. So I write in Latvian. I know Russian very well. I have learned it in school. I have read a lot in Russian, of course, and yes. But recently I have, of course, as well experienced these situations that one of our authors, Artur Spunta, for example, who is a Russian writing author in Latvia, said that. He refuses from his language because of the situation in Ukraine, and that he has lost his language to this situation.
Thank you, Inga. And just in case, I'm Katlin Kaldmaa. I'm the International Secretary of PEN International, and I originally come from Estonia, where I grew up to be completely Estonian. Of course, Russian language was compulsory in school, so there was no way around it. And I managed not to speak it for a very long time, but when I started working closely with PEN, then it's kind of, you need it in this international environment. So that has come back to me. But to many of our listeners and viewers, it is not so clear as it is for us that how did we perceive the Russian culture growing up in our childhood. So perhaps we start with Lidia.
Well, I grew up in the city of Hnatiuk, which is in Kabardino-Balkaria, the capital of Kabardino-Balkaria, and it's a Soviet. It was a Soviet city when I was growing up, and originally it was, constructed, formed during the Soviet period. All buildings are Soviet, and with the majority of Russian population. It's a Republic of Kabardino-Balkaria, Kabardins, who are the Eastern Circassians, and Balkars, a Turkish ethnic group. So they were in minority there. So it was like a traditional Soviet town. And when I went to school, all subjects were taught in Russian, and the Circassian or Kabardian language was not required. It was optional, and it was in the school curriculum, it was a 6th or 7th subject. So I only know my native language, not because I was taught at school, but because my family spoke in the family. Yeah, so my parents spoke to each other, and also because of the village that my parents came from. So every summer I was sent to the village for 3 months, so where I could be in that in native environment. So, and it was really the village, you could contrast it with the Soviet town, with Hnatiuk, because it was very different. In the village, everyone spoke, well, at that time, it was late Soviet period, everyone spoke Circassian language, and that's how I was able to immerse myself into this atmosphere. Yeah, so, but there was definitely a lack of education in my native language when I was growing up. All subjects were taught in Russian. We studied Russian literature, Russian history, everything from the Russian perspective. So I was lacking actually my own, not only language, but also history, because Circassian history has been erased completely and falsified by the Soviet historiographers. So because what happened is 90% of Circassians now live in diasporic communities all over the world, and only 5% remained 5% remained in the native homeland due to the imperial legacy, colonial imperial legacy. So that was my experience growing up in Soviet Russia, Soviet North Caucasus. Thank you.
Thank you, Lidia. So what about you, Yauhen? You said that you started speaking Belarus on your own.
Yeah, it was my personal interest, but just for show you some numbers, to show how Belarusian government and Lukashenko destroy Belarusian language and Belarusian culture. If we talk about beginning of the 19th, it's about just 1 second. It's about 85, 89% of people say that their national language is Belarusian. After that, in the beginning of the 2010, there are almost 60%. So it's 30% decrease of people, of persons that say that their own language, national language, is Belarusian. For the moment, we have only 30% of school children that are taught in Belarusians, and it's we have no one high school, high university with education in Belarusian language. So it's about 28% for Belarusian that say that they communicating at home in Belarusian language. So just for your image of state of Belarusian language in the country, and it's of course this fact has a long historical context. For example, just I guess you know about Catherine the Great, that after revolt of 1863, liquidated the Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine and Belarus and transferred the property of Ukrainian and Belarusian Catholics to the Russian Orthodox Church. She sent Russian teachers, Russian soldiers on the territory of Belarus, and Russia started to destroy all Belarusian culture and national community. I mean, so yeah. For the moment, it's really you have to have a big desire to know Belarusians, because authorities do all to destroy it, to make disappear.
Thank you, Yauhen. Inga, please.
Yes, my family had been very Latvian oriented, and in Latvia situation was better. With I learned Latvian as my family language, but I somehow, even because of that my family was very Latvian oriented, then in teenage years or in this protest years, Russian culture was something to go to, like, and aesthetics, Russian aesthetics was something like Russian hero stories, like about Zoya Kosmodemyanska or something, that in childhood come into me with some emotional stuff. Emotional world was from Russian world. Of course, one of my favorite writers, and I still can say, I don't know, but I have to say that it's Dostoevsky. So it has formed my world of view largely, and I have read a lot of books in Russian because there are not so much translated, were not so much translated literature, world literature in Latvian. So that was my experience, and yes.
Thank you, Inga. Ola?
I am not very typical example because I was born in Warsaw. I am Polish citizen, and my native language is Polish. However, I have learned Ukrainian, and it became my second mother language. So it is not very typical for Ukraine, but I would like to present you some not data, but history of oppression of Ukrainian language in Ukraine. It began starting from as early as the late 17th century, and as a liquidation of canceling Kievian metropolitanity, and as well as separate Ukrainian language in church books. So it was as early as that time. After Peter the Great, it started to be even worse. It was after the Battle of Poltava, which was 1708, and during Katlin the Great, the autonomy of Ukrainian state was completely cancelled, and Zaporizhian siege was destroyed in 1775. And 100 years later, during so-called Polish uprising, which is in Polish January uprising 1863, there was issued a so-called Valuyev's edict, and it was against Belarusian, Lithuanian, Polish, and of course Ukrainian language. So after that, 11 years later, new edict was issued, and it was a so-called Ems edict, and Ukrainian language was completely forbidden. In comparison with 18th and 19th century, 20th century was better, but in Ukraine, most of schools were in Russian language, and everyone after World War II could ask the authorities not to participate in Ukrainian language and literature lessons. So in the late 20th century, it was like that only 1/3 of Ukrainian citizens use Ukrainian as a rule, and most of Ukrainian citizens used Russian. Now it is 2/3 of Ukrainian citizens that are claiming that their language, native language, mother tongue is Ukrainian. However, it depends on the region. So to the north of Ukraine, for example, Chernihiv, or to the east of Ukraine, for example, Kharkiv or Donetsk or Mariupol, most of citizens are Russian language speakers. But it doesn't preserve them from the Russian aggression. So they were their city were destroyed, were bombed, were under attack, and they were also attacked and annihilated, not because they were Ukrainian speakers, they were Russian speakers, but they were annihilated because they were Ukrainian citizens, and it was enough to murder them.
Thank you, Ola. As everybody can see and hear, it's not a question of the last 4 months that do we have to fight the Russian cultural imperialism. It's more a question of centuries in Estonia. In my country, for example, from 1710 until 1918, when we got finally independent, and then again from 1940. So this topic is something that is very much in our hearts and has been in our minds for decades and decades, for as long as we have lived, basically. What I still consider a small miracle in Soviet Union is that the 3 small Baltic countries were able to keep their languages in schools, so that I studied in Estonian, Inga studied in Latvian, and our Lithuanian friends would study in Lithuanian. Of course, there were plenty of Russian schools, but still in our country, the majority went to Estonian schools. So until now, we have 1/3 of the population is Russian speaking, not all Russian, of course, but Russian speaking population. Now, if we jump from this to, let's say, this moment in 21st century, how would we fight back or to end this cultural imperialism? I would call it cultural occupation, if we are always told that, yes, what about Tolstoy, what about Dostoevsky, what about Shostakovich, what about Tchaikovsky? What should one do on a wider level? Inga.
Yeah, I know that I'm not this most hurt party, but I want, because I want to say this just shortly, that this question, what about Russian culture? It reminds me this question, which I have heard a lot. What about men? Every time when I start to talk in my on poetry or in stand-up, when I start to talk about women's rights, there always somebody who is telling, what about men? Yes, there are so many women killed by their partners, but what about men? And that, I think this is, of course, this situation is much more dense, but and this women's situation has been in hundreds and hundreds of years. But I think, and the answer as well is this, in this same area, that's we are not talking about men. And we don't need to talk about Russian culture. We just need to give time and place to Ukrainian culture, to Belarusian culture. We just need to women culture, written word. We just need to do this positive discrimination and not in this and to give time and place to these persons which need to be heard, and just not talk about that culture, but just talk about Ukrainian and Belarusian culture and give them time and place.
Thank you, Inga. Very strong point of view. Yauhen?
Yep, maybe just to answer your question, I would like to mention 2 types of, if we speak about colonialism, we distinguish 2 types of not nationalism, but imperialism. It's so yes, defensive. We have defensive nationalism and expansive or aggressive nationalism. Of course, defensive nationalism is characteristics of those communities which feel themselves in danger, like Belarus now. We are really in danger of Russian, but not. We are just in process of Russian invasion, military, cultural, and whatever you want. And it's this because of their small numbers, for example, as I say, Belarusians, or because of the constant danger posed by aggressive neighbors, and it's also our case. Therefore, they direct their national intention inside themselves. And like with Ukrainians also, Ukrainians started to develop their own culture, and this fact was viewed by Russians like nationalism, like something not very good, like they're Nazi, etc. And but in the same time, expensive, aggressive nationalism. Is outward looking, rather inward looking, and those often such empires does not even notice its own chauvinism and its colonial aspirations. And in modern history, small nations have more than once fallen under the scathing criticism of colonizers for directing their energies not towards society building with Russia, like right now, but towards the consolidation of national identity. And I guess it's very important to do it, to keep developed our culture, our own culture. Maybe Belarus has to do it mostly abroad, unfortunately, because all Belarusian culture is prohibited in Belarus. Just also few numbers that during last year, Belarusian authorities, one sec, yeah, Belarusian authorities liquidated more than 700 of society organizations. Belarusian PEN recorded more, not more, but about 1,500 cultural and human rights violations against cultural workers. Now we have about 1,200 political prisons, and 79 of those are cultural workers. 31 are writers in detention. So unfortunately, it's really hard. It's really hard to do something, but we must do it. We must continue this hard work, and yep, as our colleague said, to do it, this positive discrimination and not pay attention to Russian culture maybe for the time, but pay more attention to Belarusian, Ukrainian, etc.
Thank you, Yauhen. We are all following what has been going on also in Belarus and helping our colleagues as much as we can. And we are very happy that you are safe and sound in Poland. Ola?
Yes, thank you. My question is why we are so worrying about Russian culture and not worrying about other cultures which are in oppression, like Belarusian culture or Ukrainian culture in Ukraine under Russian occupation. So what about Hrigori Skovoroda, the 300th anniversary we are celebrating this year? What about Taras Shevchenko? What about Ivan Franko? What about Lesia Ukrainka? What about Olga Kobylanska? What about Lina Kostenka? I'm not worrying about Dostoevsky, Pushkin, or Tolstoy. I'm worrying about not only Skovoroda or Shevchenko, but about Jakub Kolas or other great Belarusian writers. and especially about writers who are in exile now and whose works are banned from Belarusian schools, like Alexievich, but not only Alexievich. So we can imagine what is the situation now in Mariupol schools, which are completely Russified now, and we can just compare with Crimean schools, which are completely banned from Kirimli, from Tatars, Crimea Tatars language. There are no schools of Crimean Tatars in Crimea Peninsula. Besides that, it is their land, their motherland. So we do not have to worry about Russian culture. We have to worry about other cultures. And it is starting point, but it is not the last point. The problem is that Russian imperialism doesn't end on schools or on banning writers from their countries. We can name other imperial practices, like buying the rights for translation of foreign languages writers on the whole territory of former Soviet Union. And it is not a problem of Russian imperialism. It is a problem of publishers from abroad who agree to sell their rights for the whole territory of Soviet Union. So Russian imperialism does not end on the border of Russia. It is everywhere where their attempts to subordinate other peoples are in action. So I'm afraid that Russian imperialism doesn't end on the Russian's border. It is everywhere, in US, in Great Britain, in Spain, in France, everywhere.
Yes, thank you so much, Ola. What about Ukrainian culture? What about Belarus culture? Before going to Lidia, you're next, then I will give my own proposal. Like, what about getting or establishing a school curriculums that are free from cultural occupation, and not only Russian cultural occupation, there is also American, there is also Great British, and replacing them with curricula that is trying to make students understand the world culture as a whole, bringing in more different cultures, smaller, different point of views. And possible that this would also mean that we may get rid of the masculine perspective of the world when we bring in more different works from the field of literature, music, and what's not. Lidia, what is your proposal?
Thank you very much. I agree with the previous speakers that, first of all, we need to, I guess, well, I said I teach Russian, right, in American academia. And my proposal is we need to rethink the way we teach Russia. And I do it in my classes because I always, make sure that I tell my students my positionality. As I said, I'm a Circassian from the North Caucasus. And I always tell my students that I teach, Russian literature from that perspective, Russian culture from the perspective of the non-Russian, ethnically non-Russian from the North Caucasus. So, for example, if I teach Russian classical literature, or I don't know, the Tolstoy or Lermontov, Pushkin, especially when they representations of the Caucasus, I always make sure to bring my perspective, right? So, and we need to highlight. We need to make sure to highlight the culture of other ethnicities, and most importantly, the political struggles of other ethnic groups who live in Russia and outside of Russia, the post-Soviet, the post-Soviet, in the post-Soviet borderlands. So, and I mean, especially those ethnicities in Russia. Okay, there is a lot of maybe literature about Ukraine, but and also the Baltic states, etc. But there is not much about the ethnic groups actually who are in Russia right now, right? So, so we definitely need to, when we teach Russia, we need to pay attention to the political struggle of those groups, of those indigenous people in Russia. So in the North Caucasus, in Yakutia, in Bashkortostan, in Tatarstan, etc. So because right now the way Russia is taught, it's mostly from the center, right? So they're not from those peripheries. So that's, I guess, one point. Another point is, translating writers, literature. For example, we have a beautiful literature in contemporary literature in the North Caucasus, in Circassian writers. And we are finding hard time translating them, actually, because Russia doesn't do that, obviously. So, or any other, writers from Tatarstan, all of those ethnic writers, everyone, I'm sure, would love to know what these writers are trying to say, trying to communicate to the world, but they are either, mostly their literature is written in Russian, so that way they try to get larger audience. But even, if you want to teach it, for example, in the US or somewhere else, translating it into English would help them a lot to bring their messages to the outside world, right? So we have in Dagestan, for example, Alisa Ganieva. I'm sure you know this wonderful writer. So her novels are translated into English, and I am able actually to use those novels in my post-Soviet borderland course. So we read, and students are always, wow, that's so beautiful. And also there's another Chechen, he's actually a surgeon, but his autobiography about the Chechen wars has been translated into English. And I'm using that as well in my classes, and my students relate so well to these authors. They get a better understanding of what's going on in that world, right? So translating the non-Russian ethnic authors into English would help, I think, tremendously. And also maybe another idea, creating a platform for non-Russian, the representatives of these ethnic groups to speak, or to have even classes, offer online classes, because the situation with languages in Russia is just horrible, because Russia passed the law in just 2018 when studying national languages in Russian is optional now. Yeah, so the all of these languages that, for example, in my republic, Kabardino-Balkarian Republic, Kabardian and Balkar have official status in the republic's constitution alongside with Russian, but they are made optional by this law. And only if parents choose for their children to study that native language, it's only taught for 2 hours per week. So it's really those repressive measures really, make it hard for the language to survive, basically. And it's throughout Russia. So while Russia was sort of pretending to fight for the rights of Russian speakers everywhere in the world, at the same time, it was killing the native languages, the ethnic languages inside of Russia. And the situation is dire. So, and, we have resorted to, online, trying to establish online presence, online classes, but it's very difficult to do. So maybe creating a platform where, we could have like a, I don't know, Circassian language or some other languages, Tatar language, so represented, so give so these people some sort of a representation, their languages, their histories, their literatures. And I think that's the way to fight Russian imperialism. Yeah.
Yes, that's one of the ways. Thank you, Lidia. Inga, you have a comment?
Yes, sorry. I wanted to say that Russian is the language of imperialism, but English is language of capitalism. And Lidia told us that she expressed in her passion that everyone would be interested in these small languages. And I'm afraid it's not the fact that not everyone would be interested. We should somehow, all of us, try to teach our children and ourselves as well what is success, and change this perception of successful life, of good life, because right now sometimes people talk Russian or talk English because it's more comfortable for them, and it's difficult to talk this small language, or it's difficult to translate some small Latvian poet. It's not necessary for no one, because English sells better. And so it's huge question of how we should teach ourselves first, and then our children and others, that successful life is not that what we have experienced till now, that to change this understanding of success. I think that's my comment.
Yeah, can I quickly answer, actually?
Yes, please.
This is also, online language classes. It actually targets the native speakers mostly, because they are the ones who are, they are the victims of Russian. They are forgetting, they are losing their language, especially in Circassian. You can see, we have 700,000 living in the North Caucasus. But as I said, 2-3 million live in diaspora elsewhere, for example, in Turkey. So, and both this community was a victim of both aggressive Russification and Turkization. And, 2-3 million Circassians, if we teach them Circassian language, how powerful it will be. And they want to, they just, there are no tools. The government doesn't create anything. We have do it on, on our own, basically, right? On top of what we are doing, we are trying to create language classes or summer camps or whatever. So trying to sift through these government sort of structures, heavy government structures that prevent us native speakers from knowing our language, right? So because they said, you guys, native languages are pushed out of the public sphere in Russia, right? So out of schools, out of all public spheres. And this is what we are trying to fight, actually. This is for ourselves, first of all. I'm not, expecting, well, I do have some students who are interested, in Circassian language, for example, like foreigners, there are, but it's mostly to empower the native speakers, right? I'm talking about, who really want to, but they don't have, means to create means for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. It's unfortunate we have to wrap up, but I can see that there is like many more discussions in this topic to be had. So hopefully we can have another discussion in the Congress in Uppsala in the autumn. Thank you everyone so much for coming here and sharing your point of views and sharing your own stories. Hope to see you all soon. Yes, and now we have another empty chair to finish the panel. Thank you, everyone.
Since 24th February 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale military invasion of Ukraine, at least 15 journalists and media workers have been killed, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. The National Union of Journalists of Ukraine puts the total number of media workers killed at 32, which also includes reporters conscripted with the military. Here are the names of our colleagues who died unarmed while continuing to do their job. Ihor Hudenko, a freelance photojournalist and documentarian, died on February 26th near Kharkiv, filming the situation at the front line. Yevgeny Sakun, a camera operator. On March 1st, Russian military forces shelled a television tower in Kyiv, killing 5 people, including him. Oksana Haidar, or Ruda Pani, a 54-year-old Ukrainian journalist and blogger, was killed on or around March 11 by Russian artillery shelling of the village of Shevchenkova, northeast of Kyiv. Viktor Dedov, a senior camera operator at the Mariupol-based independent television station Sigma TV, was killed when a shell hit his apartment building in Mariupol on March 11. Brent Renault, a documentary filmmaker for Time Studios, was shot and killed on March 13 in the Ukrainian city of Irpin. Oleksandra Kuvshinova, a Ukrainian producer, was killed on March 14th in the village of Horenka, outside of Kyiv, while working with the US broadcaster Fox News. A vehicle carrying Kuvshinova and other journalists was struck by incoming fire. Pierre Zakrevsky, a camera operator for Fox News, was killed in the same attack on March 14th. Oksana Baulina, a journalist, was killed on March 23rd in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv while covering Russia's attack on the city. Max Levin, a Ukrainian freelance photojournalist and documentary filmmaker who had covered Russia's invasions of Ukraine since 2014, was found dead on April 1st. On April 3rd, he was awarded with the country's Order of Courage. Mantas Kvedorovičius, a Lithuanian documentary filmmaker. Russian forces had taken Kvedorovičius prisoner, then shot and executed him in the city of Mariupol. His death was made public on April 2nd. Yevgeny Bal, a 78-year-old writer and journalist, died on April 2nd after 3 days of severe beatings by Russian forces. They broke into Bal's house in the southeast Mariupol area, found a picture of Bal with Ukrainian Marines, Bal's membership card with the Ukrainian National Union of Writers, and other, quote, evidence of fascism, end of the quote. Zoroslav Zamoyski, a freelance journalist. In early April, he was found dead by local residents on street in Bucha. The sources state that it appeared to be a violent death. Roman Nezhiborets, a video technician at television broadcaster Detenets in city of Chernihiv, on April 6th, after Russian forces withdrew from the northern Ukrainian village of Yahidne, volunteers found Nezhiborets' body with the gunshot wounds to his knees and his hands tied. Vera Herich, a journalist for the US Congress-funded Radio Free Europe, was killed by Russian shelling in her apartment building in Kyiv on April 28th. Frédéric Leclerc-Imhoff, a 32-year-old cameraman with the French broadcaster BFM TV, was killed on the road to the eastern Ukrainian city of Lysychansk on May 30. Please observe a moment of silence to honor these and many other unnamed colleagues who have died in this war. Thank you.